Welcome into the Inside Scoop. Today is Monday, July 28th. I'm your host, Josh Newberg, and summer recruiting is coming to a close. But there's a couple more big commitments. We're going to cover that, including there's going to be one here on Saturday. Elite defense back Davon Benjamin will be committing right here on this channel Saturday night. Will it be Oregon or Michigan? Also Texas, USC, they are also heavily involved. But if you guys want to get notified, hit subscribe, because when we go live, it sends you a notification. You never know when we're going to go live, but you will get that notification if you are a subscriber. Also, look, we're almost to 100K just in time for the season. All right, we got a loaded show. We're going to talk some Georgia. We're going to talk some Oregon. Also, head down to Texas. We're going to talk some Aggies and Texas Tech. We got a big show, but first, we're talking uncommitted 5 stars coming off the board soon. Dates are being set. Announcements on announcements. We got announcements announcing announcements. Savion Hyder, he announced that August 19th is going to be the date that he decides his final destination. He's the number 8 overall prospect, number 1 running back in the country. And this has been a heated recruitment. You had Ohio State, Georgia. There's others, but I think there's 2 teams that we're paying attention to down the stretch. It's Tennessee or Michigan. You guys let me know in the chat, where do we think he's going? I'm not discounting Tennessee here, but I'm leaning Michigan. What do you guys think of that? I'm leaning Michigan. I see some head nods. Do you not agree with that? Do you think he's heading to Tennessee? Or is there a dark horse in this thing? Let me know. All right, moving on. So that'll be August 19th. On August 21st, we have safety Braylon Womack, number 21 overall, the number 1 safety in America. He's been a long time lean to Ohio State. I think that's where most of the predictions lie as we speak. But the Florida Gators, the Gators, they've been making a run at a couple 5 stars coming up just short. They don't have any committed. Braylon Womack, I think, probably their best chance at landing one. Auburn hasn't been living up to the standard that Hugh Freeze has set since he arrived on the Plains when it comes to recruiting, but there's still time there. Auburn heavily involved in this one. So is Texas A&M. Can't count out Texas A&M Aggies for anybody, especially a 5-star, but I like Ohio State here for Braylon Womack. You guys let me know what you're thinking. All right, offensive lineman Darius Gray, number 31 overall, so just fitting in there in that 5-star range at number 31. August 22nd is going to be his decision date. It's Clemson, LSU, Ohio State, South Carolina, Tennessee. I'm probably leaning LSU here, but I think LSU, I think South Carolina, and I think Tennessee. I would probably say those are the front runners heading into this August 22nd decision timeline. Of the names we've mentioned so far, I'd say probably Darius Gray is the one that I'm most up in the air with, but I'm leaning LSU at this point. You guys let me know where you're at. All right, edge Anthony Tank Jones. He has not made the announcement about when he's going to make his announcement to commit, so we're TBD with him, but he's number 22 overall, and you can tell he's getting closer and closer to that decision because he cut his list of offers down to 3, Alabama, Oregon, Texas A&M. Now, he didn't do this all at once. I think he had like a top 5 or top 6 prior to this. He didn't just cut 90 teams off his list down to a top 3, but he probably has about 90 offers. So he is down to 3, Alabama, Oregon, A&M. I'm leaning Alabama. That's the in-state program. I mean, I don't know if there really is a dark horse out of the 3. I think Oregon, Texas A&M are both running in that 2 spot because I think Alabama is solidly. Alabama's doing what they need to do this cycle in keeping the top prospects in the state home. So I'm leaning Alabama when it comes to Anthony Tank Jones. You guys let me know. Am I wrong? Am I right? Do you agree? Do you disagree with any of those statements? Let me know. Comment section below. Talking some Georgia recruiting with Jake Rowe, Dawgs HQ. Jake, what do you think's been the most interesting storyline this offseason when it comes to Georgia recruiting?
Oh, man, it's the if you're dealing with the fans on a daily basis, it's the roller coaster aspect of it. You know, it was in April and May, it was, oh my God, you know, Georgia's going to get roasted on the recruiting trail. They're not getting anybody. And then they get 9 commits in 9 days. And then they get, I think overall, it was something close to like 20 commits in 65 days or something. It was wild. And then, you know, You end up with James Johnson flipping. You don't get Tyler Atkinson. The whole situation with Chase Callicut's going on. And it's just been one thing right after the other, kind of, bouncing back and forth. But ultimately, I think if you talk to a lot of Georgia fans, they'll tell you this is shaping up to be another elite class. It's another really, really strong class. It's vintage Kirby Smart and kind of how and the way he recruits. And ultimately, there's a lot of really good players in there, and they're meeting some huge needs. I mean, defensive line's loaded, defensive backfield's loaded. The two top recruits in the class, two highest rated recruits in the class, are offensive skill guys. And that's if you want to try to take a knock at Kirby's recruiting, it's a lot of the elite recruiting in the past has been defensive guys. Most of the elite recruiting, well, they've got the top, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, no longer the top quarterback in the country, in Jared Curtis, but he's a top 10 overall prospect. And then they got Caden Prothro, who's kind of a do-it-all big playmaker. So they're checking off so many boxes, and the not the least of which, it was something that needs to be brought up, is they got one of their top running back targets as well in Jay Lamar, a guy that everybody wanted. So the class itself, it has shaped up to be incredible, but it's just been the story has been the roller coaster aspect of it.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the message board just oscillates between the sky is falling and we're getting everybody, and it's just There is no in between. It's one or the other, and for good reason. I mean, you're right. That run from late May into late June, where they picked up like 20 commitments in a 5 or 6 week period, was almost unmatched, really. So it's been like everybody, it's been an up and down roller coaster ride for Georgia fans, but number 2 in the country right now. I mean, what could you possibly, with the number 1 quarterback in America, what could you possibly want? Of course, there's others. And there's some more additions that could come just moments before we went to tape. Offensive lineman Brett Colajay announced that he's going to make an announcement where he's going to school on August 1st. So Brett Colajay, he's been on the board for Georgia. I know there's others involved, but where do you think the Dawgs sit?
This is one of those, Josh, a lot of times when a guy says he's announcing, you feel like he's going to be leaning heavily somewhere, right? Like you don't really want to announce until – I do think this one, though, is still up in the air a little bit. And I think Georgia is as much in it as anybody else. I mean, I think – my gut tells me at this particular moment, and I will say this, I haven't really gotten an update in the past 3 or 4 days, but week ago, 2 weeks ago, it really seemed like Georgia USC, and Miami was kind of fading there a little bit. I don't know where Miami is as of now, but I know that coming out of his official visit to Georgia, the Bulldogs felt really, really good. And you've heard some good things about Georgia here lately as far as that recruitment goes. I do know that they very much want him, and he would fit a big need in the class. One thing I love about Brett Colajay is he is considered an interior prospect, but he's in that 6'5" range with those 33 and a half inch arms. He's one of those guys that, if you say, hey, how are you going to play the game for the next 15 years of your life, you're probably going to play it on the interior, most of it on the interior. But I also like the fact that he reminds me a little bit of Micah Morris in this way for Georgia, that, true interior guy, but can also kind of bump out and maybe play tackle for you as well. So I do think Georgia is very, very much in this race for the time being, and we'll kind of see how things go as you get closer to the announcement.
Yeah, and that'll take place on Friday. Then on Saturday, defensive lineman Anthony Lonan, he's going to make a August 2nd decision. Yes, that's Saturday. And it seems like this is an in-state battle that Georgia should win.
Yeah, that's what it feels like. I mean, he's a Georgia legacy. His brother played for a year his dad played for a year at Georgia with Kirby Smart. Clark Central High School. One of the funny things is you look at his profile, and one of the features I love about our profiles at On3 is, or I guess it rivals now. Now that I'm saying it, one of the things I like about that is distance thing right there. It's just blank because all he's got to do is cross the street and he's on Georgia's campus. I do like this guy a lot, though, Josh. I really do. You start talking about. Well, he doesn't have ideal size. No, I mean, he's 6'2". He's not small by any means, 6'2", 270. But he's not that Trey Scott, who's Georgia's defensive line coach, vintage Trey Scott, like 6'4", 6'5", super long arms, 2-gap guy, 1-gap guy. This is a upfield playmaker, tons of tackles for a loss, sack. Probably, if Georgia gets him, it's probably going to be an interior DPR, designated pass rush guy on or on third down. But at the same time, could probably bump out and play 5-tech, 4-eye technique on first and second down and defend against the run. I like him a lot. And I know Charles Power really elevated him in these last rivals rankings, or I guess in the initial rivals rankings, industry rankings, stuff like that, rivals 300. But I do think he's kind of on the rise as a prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like Georgia's in really good shape here.
All right, and then we got one more probably coming off the board before summer's over. That's running back Savion Hyder. He set a decision date for August 19th. We know Georgia's been involved. They got him on campus a couple times, but how big of a factor are they heading into this August 19th decision?
Man, what a difference a year makes in a recruitment, because this time last year I thought Georgia was in phenomenal shape. I think Georgia's on the outside looking in here. They would love to add him. There's no doubt about it. I do believe if you were to get Josh Crawford and the rest of Georgia's coaching staff in a moment of candor and look at their board and stuff like that, he's probably the number one running back on it. But it just seems like Georgia has kind of faded here in this race. That might have something to do with money. That might have something to do with other schools have done a better job recruiting him. I'm not going to tell anybody that Georgia just recruits everybody the best, and every time they lose somebody, it's because of money. But I do think that Georgia's – I wouldn't even consider him a dark horse at this point. I would be very surprised if Georgia landed Savion Hyder.
Yeah, and like you said, when guys set that decision date, they're usually leaning in one direction, and it seems like Michigan and Tennessee is the direction he's leaning right now, not so much Georgia and Ohio State, who were also heavily involved at different points. 30 total commitments for the Dawgs, number 2 ranked class in the country. We see there's a couple more pieces on the board that they could add before it's all over, but who are you most excited about from this current group of commitments?
Man, there's a lot of really good players in this group, but Akani Egboko is one that he's a highly rated guy, Josh, and you see kind of, I don't know that he has a chance to get into the 5-star range. There's a lot of tackles that are in that 5-star range already. But the thing I like about him is he's highly rated, and I don't think he's come close to playing his best football yet. And he's from a tackle standpoint, he has everything you want. He's a big, lean athlete who carries a lot of weight, but he carries it well. I'm really excited about kind of his long-term projection, because he's super long, he's physical. There are a lot of really good schools that were in it for him, and he's one of, it's kind of odd here, he's one of 3 guys who is committed to Georgia, who either their older brother plays at Georgia now or he played at Georgia. There's PJ Dean's in there as well. Carter Lucky is also in that group. But Akani Egboko, also because of the premium position aspect of it, Georgia, it's harder now than to do what Georgia was doing under Sam Pittman and to a lesser extent Matt Luke for a couple of years, which is sign 2 or 3 5-star offensive linemen in one class. It's a rev share, NIL, all that stuff going on with money. Everybody kind of has to kind of go for the one guy, and he's kind of that crown jewel of Georgia's O-line class. And I think Akani Egboko is a fantastic player who just has a long way to go before he's going to get to that ceiling. And those are the kind of guys you like, the ones that are really good now but can get a lot better.
All right, Georgia fans, talk to us. Who was your favorite player in this class so far? Let us know. Comment section below. We're going to talk a little Oregon recruiting here with Justin Hopkins of Scoop Duck. We are going to find out just how strong Oregon's current NIL machine is. But first, Justin, there's another 5-star that's going to come off the board. We think he's going to come off the board before the season starts, and that's edge Anthony Tank Jones. Now, he hasn't set a date. We think it could be sometime in August, most likely, but he did cut that list down to 3: Alabama, Texas A&M, and Oregon. Why are we giving Oregon a shot here despite him being from the state of Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because it doesn't happen often, but, the Ducks were able to pull off that stunner last year with Naeem Offord, obviously committing to Oregon over Bama and others. So, normally I wouldn't give the Ducks much shot here, but Dane Lanning's proven he's able to win some of those battles. The one thing I will mention here is obviously Oregon held a very we'll just call it a notable commitment from Richard Wesley, another edge in this recruiting class. obviously now he's committed to Texas. So we know the Ducks, are looking for an edge in this class, and it feels like, now they're maybe able to allocate some of those resources into Tank Jones and make themselves a player in this recruitment. This is a tough one, though. This guy's got, I think, all three schools guessing who it might be, and all of us are guessing along with them.
Yeah, but I mean, Oregon was able to get him out. What does he like so much about Oregon? What have they done to get in this position?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've showcased what they've been able to do with defensive linemen at the school under Dane Lanning, and that's whether they're prep, whether Oregon's developed them, or whether they've been transfers that have come in and raised their NFL profile. So I know that one of the things he speaks about most frequently is the experience that the coaches have at his position. So you've got Dane Lanning, who knows how to coach that position. You've got Tosh Lupoy. You've got Tony Tuioti. You've got three really high caliber coaches there that know your position well and are able to develop you. So I think that's the big thing. The second thing, and he's mentioned this as well, is just kind of blazing his own trail, right? Trying something new, going somewhere else, maybe limiting the distractions, which Eugene's really good about, and just kind of getting away. So sometimes that just ends up being, something these kids want to do. A lot of times distance is not on Oregon's side, which it's not here. But there are some instances where young men just kind of want to get away and try something new and see something new. And that's certainly something that Tank Jones has mentioned.
All right. So we don't know when Tank Jones is going to make his decision, but we do know that there's two prospects committing on Saturday that are on Oregon's board. Defensive lineman Deuce Gerald's and elite defensive back Davon Benjamin committing right here on the Rivals Recruits channel. That'll both go down on Saturday. We're hosting the Davon Benjamin one. So which one of these commitments do you think Oregon has a better shot at? And is there a chance that they could land them both on Saturday?
Good chance they could land both. Won't be easy. We know that. I like Davon Benjamin as we kind of enter this thing this week. I know that there will be news throughout the week, but I know Michigan and others have continued to push, but relationships have held out strong there. Benjamin's always spoke highly of Oregon, even dating back to a year ago. It just really feels like that's one Oregon's kind of like sunk their claws into, if you will, and done a really good job recruiting. Deuce Gerald's has kind of been all over the board, right? Kind of felt like Ohio State at some point, felt like maybe Ole Miss or LSU. Oregon's kind of worked themselves in there late. So, for me with that one, kind of keeping track, again, we're talking about a young man out of Georgia. Will distance be a factor? Done this for a long time, and all of a sudden it gets close to where the commitment's actually going to take place, and the reality is that you'll be 3,000 miles from home. Things get weird. So I do like where Oregon sits for Deuce Gerald's today, but again, I've done this long enough to know that this could be a very long week for Dan Lanning, as he probably is sweating both of these out.
All right. I want to know how strong you would consider Oregon's current NIL machine. And I ask this because there's kind of two sides to this coin, right? If you read the comment section, Oregon's backed by Nike, they get everybody they want. Well, but also if you read the Oregon message board and if you watch our show, I mean, there was significant period of this summer where Oregon early in the summer was in what we would call maybe a slump in recruiting. I mean, there was a lot of targets that they did not land. So if you were to believe the comment section that Oregon just pays for everybody and they land everybody, then you'd have to scratch your head and say, well, why didn't they land all those big targets that they kind of missed on over the summer? So where do you think Oregon's current NIL is at?
Yeah, I mean, you basically have both sides of the arguments there presented, and it is. It's like, okay, well, Oregon landed them. They clearly bought them. But then, when Oregon misses, they're broke. And it's like, which one is it, right?
Right.
And I think the way you have to look at Oregon is this, and I think it's similar with Ohio State and Georgia and Bama in years in the past. Oregon has a very, very talented young nucleus in Eugene right now on the roster. A lot of young guys that are, true freshmen, redshirt freshmen, whatever the case might be. They are really in a position now where they don't need 30 commitments at all. They don't need to go land a class of 30. They need to land probably, I'm going to guess at the end of the day, 17 to 20, maybe 21 of the right guys that basically will be able to come in. So Oregon has had more, they've been in the game for more big targets than I've ever tracked in a recruiting cycle before. Yeah, they were in it for Jared Curtis and Jackson Cantwell and these other elite players. Didn't get them all, right? Just they're not going to. But to be in that top two or top three or final two, final three shows that Oregon's able to play ball with the best of them. They've got, the highest average rating per commit class right now in the country. So again, I think you just look at Oregon. It's like, all right, this class is going to be based on quality, not quantity. And the one thing we have to look at, and my point to NIL, they can be aggressive with certain targets, but the other part is this: they also need to allocate a pretty good amount of money into the team they already have and keeping those guys in Eugene. Oregon's one of the very best to do that. They very rarely lose a guy to the transfer portal that they truly want.
Yeah.
And if anybody's even thinking about it, they can usually get that handled internally. So you kind of have to look at it two ways and at least appreciate, okay, look, they've got a good young team there. They just need to kind of pick and choose. But yeah, they're literally not just signing out blank checks. Otherwise, like I said, Jackson Cantwell, Jared Curtis, and some of these others would be on the Oregon commit list.
Right. Richard Wesley, Tyler Atkinson. I mean, they were involved in almost everybody. And like you said, it's kind of like recruiting or retention. Which one is Oregon really going to open up the faucet for? And who knows? Maybe into the fall, there are some important targets that maybe could be early playmakers for Oregon, and they could say, oh, well, let's break the bank for him. So that leads me to my next question. Who are maybe a few names committed elsewhere right now that Oregon fans should maybe keep an eye on because the Ducks could make another run at this fall?
Yeah, I know, fans get leery of, we're going to rely on flips or whatever the case might be, but that's the new recruiting, right? With all these young men coming off the board in June, July, you and I and the others get to recover a second recruiting season in the fall, which is flip season. Oregon will go big game hunting once again. So, they're not in a position where they're looking for fallbacks. So a couple names that immediately come to mind: Zion Ely, the edge, committed to Maryland. We know that. What will happen with Maryland this season, and will that impact, Ely's commitment? I think you look at Anthony Jones that we talked about earlier, another edge prospect. What Oregon does there based on what Jones does, might impact Ely. Oregon was in the game pretty heavily for Chris Henry Jr., Caden Dixon-Wyatt, both receivers committed to Ohio State. I think the Ducks did a great job getting Messiah Hampton and Jalen Lott, but would love to add a third receiver in this class. I have zero doubt that communication at the very least has continued with both. Oregon did lose, a star offensive tackle in Cody Green to Washington. The Huskies were able to flip him. That was a big one on the recruiting trail. Again, I know Oregon would love to get another elite offensive tackle in this cycle. I think Cody Green's a one to watch. Last one I'll give away here is Joey O'Brien, safety. The kid's just phenomenal, had a huge spring and summer, obviously made a commitment, and it wasn't to Oregon. I think Oregon felt very good about where they stood with O'Brien at various times, and I think he might be a tad bit impressionable. There's nothing wrong with that, but if they're able to get him back on campus later this year, I think that's a guy they would very much like to add to the commit list. So those are just a few of the flips, but we know Dan Lanning's one of the very best when it comes to those like late minute flips. He's really good at that stuff.
All right, Oregon fans and Oregon haters, let's talk about this in the comment section. Where do you think Oregon stands in the world of NIL? Because, like we said, there's kind of two sides to this coin. Where would you rank them amongst the big hitters like USC, Georgia, Texas, Michigan, Ohio State, Alabama? Where would you put Oregon in that group? Let's talk about it. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Texas A&M recruiting. We got Aggie Yell insider Jackson Calloway. Jackson, it's great to have you on the network. We don't get to really talk as much Aggie recruiting because we didn't have a site, but with the merger with Rivals, we got Aggie Yell. So welcome to the network. Glad we can talk some Texas A&M football.
Thank you, man. I'm pumped to be here, and it's awesome to talk about some Aggie football on 3. It's exciting times.
Absolutely. And, man, it's been a hot summer on the recruiting trail. The Aggies landed 2 defensive commitments last week, but Jackson, I saw some new predictions rolling in for a priority offensive target. Take us behind the scenes of that one.
Yeah, so, Christian Ellsworth and the offensive staff have been really big on Evan Jacobson for some time now. Notre Dame has been a school that's kind of held some momentum there, but they had 2 tight end commits in the last month. And we've kind of seen that momentum carry on to A&M, and I think Iowa State is a school that's continuing to pursue there. And I think Notre Dame is also still a suitor. But I think right now Texas A&M kind of holds all the buzz, and as we kind of creep into that decision timeline, I think A&M's in the best spot.
Okay, now talking about decision timelines, we don't know exactly when it's going to happen, but 5-star edge Anthony Tank Jones is going to take himself off the board. He cut that list of offers down to a top 3. We got Oregon, we got A&M, we got in-state Alabama. Where do you think A&M sits right now as we wait for this decision date to drop?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama is currently holding all the buzz. I think A&M continues to work there, and I think right now that they're probably the school with the best relationships with Tank Jones. But I think the in-state, the pull to being an in-state guy for Alabama and the culture that's been set there, I think is something that's very intriguing to him. I think Oregon, you can't rule out Oregon, but I think this is going to come down to the Aggies and the Tide. But I definitely probably put A&M in that second spot right now.
All right. We've seen a lot of success this summer. Aggies currently sitting with the number 5 ranked class in America. That being said, though, who are the priorities for Texas A&M as we head into this football season?
Yeah, I think right now when you look at 26, I think that you're kind of looking at the flip targets. I think Tristan Keys, Jimmy Winfield from USC is another guy. I think Jace Matthews is a guy that's currently on the board still from Mississippi. He's a guy that they want to get. But when you look at 27, I think, too, that there's a few guys that they're looking at early. And I think they're holding some buzz for a few of those guys right now. But heading into the season, I think the focus is right now on a few of those 2026 guys and maybe getting a few of those flips on board.
Yeah. Let's talk about that Tristan Keys recruitment, right? Mm-hmm. We hear about Tennessee. We hear about, obviously the program he's committed to, LSU. But we also hear a lot Miami's in there too, but we also hear a lot about Texas A&M. Why have the Aggies not gone away despite his commitment to LSU?
Yeah, I think the big factor there is Holman Wiggins. I mean, he is without a doubt one of the elite recruiters in this industry. And when it comes to receiver coaches, I don't think there's many that do it better than he does. Last class, he was able to get Jerome Miles. He already has a few key guys, and Madden Williams, Aaron Gregory, some other guys in this class already. I think they're still looking for that cherry on top, and I think Tristan Keys is that guy that they're willing to go after. They're willing to do what it takes to get that guy. And so it's going to be interesting down the stretch. I think that one has a few more twists and turns, and I think he's going to end up on a visit or two at College Station this year.
I was going to say, I think there's a good chance we see him pop up at a game or two for the Aggies this
100%.
cycle. All right. Let's turn the page. Not completely, though, but it is time. I know it sounds crazy to be talking 2027, but we just had a quarterback, the number 2 rated quarterback in America, just committed to the Irish right here on this channel. So are the Aggies gaining any traction with some 5 stars in the 2027 cycle?
Yeah, I think, you have a 5-star cornerback down in Euless Trinity. That guy is someone that A&M really likes. I think it's going to come down to Texas A&M there. And then when, we're talking about quarterbacks, I don't think he's necessarily a 5-star yet, but he's our 3rd-ranked quarterback, Jace Johnson, out of Georgia. I think that one's going to come down to Texas A&M and Florida State. He has a commitment set for August 3rd. But right now I've been hearing a lot of really good things on A&M there, and they love to get their quarterback locked in early. And I think this is going to be another scenario where they're able to get that guy committed early and to start building onto that class.
All right. Well, I'm really excited, Jackson, to have you on the channel. We're going to be talking a lot more Texas A&M as we move forward, so make sure you guys are subscribed. Appreciate you taking a little time today to drop by the Inside Scoop.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me.
Let's talk a little Texas Tech recruiting. We got Ben going with Red Raider Sports. Now, Ben, Texas Tech has made some noise this cycle. So what's it like covering Tech recruiting in the cycle of 2026?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on, Josh. And it's been a very interesting cycle insofar as, and maybe it started out a little slower, but you mentioned it the last few weeks, just the commits that have landed. I think the last 4 or 5 have all been blue chippers, 4 stars, right in that mix. So it's been a lot of excitement on our website for sure. And they've really needed to close strong in 2026 after, maybe kind of a down year last year. They took the 2025 class. Yeah, they got some good kids for sure, but they really focused on the portal, as we all saw, in December. That was really kind of the main focus last year. And then now it's kind of back to really hitting the high school class hard with 2026. And they've done a really good job of that.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Last year, the focus was on the portal. The year prior, they made some huge waves, landing the number 2 ranked wide receiver in America, Micah Hudson. But this year, I mean, if people weren't paying attention to what Texas Tech was doing 2 years ago with Hudson, they're definitely paying attention now with the addition of Felix Ojo. After all those visits to Texas, all those visits to Michigan, Texas Tech lands him. And first of all, why did Texas Tech make him such a priority?
It goes back to Joey McGuire and his whole philosophy of, big people beat up little people. And Texas Tech has really struggled in the trenches on both sides, offensive and defensive lines historically. And that was kind of one of the main things he wanted to get fixed, is really recruit both lines of scrimmage hard. And, everyone knows the name Cody Campbell by now. He's kind of leading the charge for the Matador Club and Texas Tech's NIL collective. He actually played offensive line under Coach Leach, a little over 20 years ago. So he knows how just important the offensive line is. And so it was kind of a team effort. Like I said, they've struggled on the offensive line the last 3 years since Coach McGuire has gotten to Lubbock, and they, are trying to throw resources at that position to fix it. And Felix Ojo is the number 1 rated player in the state of Texas, so it doesn't get much better than that. And they were able to kind of steal him there at the last minute. It was a huge win for them for sure.
A shocking win, but a huge one at that. So that reminds me, Micah Hudson. What happened? What did Micah Hudson do this offseason?
Yeah, headed out to College Station for a couple of weeks. I guess figured out that wasn't exactly what he was looking for. And
did he enroll
at A&M? Maybe for I don't know if he enrolled or not. I know he was with the team, maybe around them for a couple of weeks, but he got back to Lubbock as soon as he could. People in his camp never wanted him to leave. I don't even think he wanted to leave initially. It was just all sorts of factors that kind of played into that. And then once he realized Texas Tech was what he wanted and needed, and Texas Tech was able to kind of reconcile that relationship a little bit, they were able to make that happen. And all reports from this offseason are that, Hudson is back and he's just different in a good way. And that, he's really, tearing it up in the offseason, and it really, has gotten back into that locker room in the good graces of everyone. And, big things are still expected of him because, like you said, he was the number 2 receiver in the 2025 class. He still has all the potential in the world. And so, we'll see what it looks like moving forward. But it's good to get him back. And, both sides are happy with the move. So we'll see how it works out.
All right. Okay. Stopped over there for a cup of coffee, and he is back, ready to go, like he never left. We'll see how it works out. Outside of Felix Ojo, what do you think was the biggest win for Texas Tech on the recruiting trail? Because they had a flurry of commitments in July.
Yeah, there's a few guys I think worth mentioning, but I'm just going to go to the most recent one, and that's Chase Campbell, receiver out of Friendship High School. I think Rivals has him as the number 57 or 58 overall player in the class. And at different points in his recruitment, different schools were leading. Both of his parents went to Arkansas. I think Baylor was in his ear a lot, and then Kansas State also. And so it's huge whenever you can keep those West Texas kids at home, especially one as talented as Chase Campbell. Texas Tech, again, along with the offensive and defensive line, something they've struggled with is creating explosive plays. And I think Campbell is a verified track guy. He, has a ton of production at the high school level, multi-sport athlete. So he really brings all of those things, and he's going to be a weapon. He was a top target, and they were able to finish strong and keep him in West Texas.
All right, so we're getting ready for the season to start. Recruiting is going to slow down briefly, at least briefly. So what do you think Texas Tech needs to finish before signing day? What position groups are still a position of need?
Yeah, I would say they're mostly done. Maybe some senior evaluations or two. Briefly, they did offer a Miami commit last week, a Shari Charles pass rusher, which kind of, made you think if there's something going on over there. So, potentially a pass rusher, maybe another offensive lineman or two. We'll see how it works out going into the season.
All right. So what are the expectations? We've seen teams recruit really well during the summer, but if it doesn't hold through the season, so what do you think Texas Tech must do to not only maintain what they got, but also add a few key pieces down the stretch?
The expectation is to make it to Arlington in the Big 12 championship. I think anyone you talk to in that building is going to say the same thing. Texas Tech has never won the Big 12. They've never played in the Big 12 championship. And with everything that was poured into the team with, the portal class, the facilities, the new offensive and defensive coordinators. I think this is their year to kind of go do it. And I think that's the expectation. And anything less than that, they would tell you would be a disappointment.
All right. Texas Tech writer Ben Golan of Red Raider Sports. Thanks for coming by and talking a little recruiting with us today.
Thanks, Josh.